What's up? I'm Brian Drake here on the latest retro on the Dice Tower. Taking a look today at the X-Files conspiracy theory in the Everything is Connected series from Matt Fantastic and IDW Games. Today, this game is all about things being not what they seem, right? Everything's connected, it's conspiracy. Let's dive in and take a look at this storytelling game right now, see how it plays, and then come back up and talk about those expectations, right? Notice, game shelf, expectations. Or could these just be fake? Maybe they're not even real games. Maybe they're just a facade and all this is just one paper wall that at the end of the show, what you thought was real is actually going to fall off the wall as if it was posters. Yes, that's a deep cut reference. Whoever can name what reference that's from, what show that's from, you get 10 points. Let's take a look at how this game plays right now and we'll come back up and talk about it. So the game is played over a series of rounds in which everyone will be either Mulder or the FBI. What happens is, each round, Mulder, whoever that is, that term, will pick up a conspiracy card. They'll read off the conspiracy. The people playing the FBI will take one of their 3 evidence cards that they have, and they will play them next to the conspiracy. So, let's just say this is what gets played here. A commercial airliner disappears over northern Siberia, never to be seen again. That's the conspiracy. Well, I've been given these 3 pieces of evidence. Subsidiary, publishing house, nonfiction, science fiction, stone gargoyles. Let's give it a couple more in case the player count's a little higher. The player count, for instance, goes up to 8 players, so we could have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let's do 5. Swamp boots with dinosaur foot-shaped soles, Wilhelm von Schmidt. Stone gargoyles, non-fiction, science fiction, subsidiary publishing house. The person playing Mulder takes 30 seconds to look over these cards, get an idea of how they want to come up with the conspiracy, and then they launch into their conspiracy, a little something like this. Wilhelm von Schmidt, the famous sculptor of the Victorian era of France, moved from Germany obviously, while carving one of his gargoyles, noticed something off in the distance of the moor that he was working on of a cathedral in the middle of England, right? There were swamp boots stuck in the moor, in the grimpen mire, as it were, shaped like dinosaur feet, right? But no one would believe him because he had sadly been defamed by writing nonfiction science fiction. That's right. It seems to be a genre so small at the time, but no one believed it because they were trying to pass off true stories as fake stories. But this, as the subsidiary of a publishing house himself, he tried to get his work published, and yet no one believed it about gargoyles that came to life because he was found to have defrauded himself because he published under a false pseudonym in order to try to gain credibility. Therefore, fast forward 100 years later, and this same man left his legacy by hiring assassins to carry out his vengeance on everyone who claimed to not be a true believer in his science fiction nonfiction, including his great-great-grandson, Wilhelm von Schmidt III, who in fact was a commercial fighter pilot turned commercial flyer, who happened to be flying at the wrong place in the wrong time and disappeared over northern Siberia, never to be seen again. Did it have something to do with Wilhelm von Schmidt Sr.? It absolutely did. Just like that. Yes, that was off the cuff. I had 10 seconds to prepare, whereas y'all would normally have 30 seconds, but that's what you do. You come up with a silly story like that, and then everyone else will go, or. The problem is they can't talk to each other. So you have to hope that you're in the majority, because that's the way you get points, is by either voting in the majority or being Mulder and being given points if it is believable. That's really it. So when you're voting, you want to be in the majority. So even if you think the plausibility of the story sounds absolutely silly, which we'll talk about that more in a minute, you want to vote which way you think everyone else is going to vote. So it adds a little bit of social dynamic there. But that's how you play. Play passes to someone else. You do this until everyone has played Mulder twice, and that's the game. So that's the game right there. It's, let me hesitate. That's what X-Files conspiracy theory is that. That's how you play it. Here's my major issue with this thing, is it doesn't feel like a game. It feels like an improv comedy or a acting troupe exercise where you get your friends together and you come up with the best story, but the story doesn't really matter because your friends are going to vote, but they're not really voting on what's true or not because it's all false, because you're doing conspiracy theories about a cyanide werewolf with a gorilla paw ashtray. The syndicate, so they quickly put someone in a fugue state, so therefore they woke up and they were missing time, but what they found was they smelled what smelled like a bit like almond pips, right? And the almonds, that slight sense of burnt almonds was actually just cyanide. And that, I mean, what is that, right? I mean, yes, you're telling a story, you're coming up with a story, and your friends are going to vote who thinks the story is most true. But the problem is they're having to vote in character. They're not having to vote as your friends. So when they vote in character, they're giving points based on their character, but they have to guess whether the rest of the group's going to go with the story or without the story. So it's kind of a social deduction game in the sense of, what are my friends going to do? Well, you don't know, because you're just, all you have is what's been given to you by Mulder. I get it, I understand that's the point, but it doesn't feel like a game to me. It just feels like an activity that you would do with friends to come up with stories and make up things. So niche audience, whatever you want to say, just not for me at all. So this is a pass for me. But there are probably people out there who would find this enjoyable and just and get into the whole storytelling aspect. That's not for me. For instance, though, we reviewed Cthulhu's Vault here a few months back, and it is a storytelling game too that has a game attached to it. It's you fight a big monster at the end, right? Because in the storytelling, you're actually collecting tokens and that you can use to fight the monster. Does this one need a big fight at the end? Well, of course not. But it is different. It shows you how there's an actual game attached to that one, whereas this one just feels like an activity. So that's kind of my thoughts on this whole thing here from Matt Fantastic and those guys and everybody involved with that. It's just not for me. So I'm Brian Drake here on The Latest Retro. If you want to see more videos, I do make sure to check out the Latest Retro on Twitter, Instagram, all that sort of stuff. Until next time, I'll see you.
Thanks so much for watching the Dice Tower videos. Find more great videos and reviews, as well as our top-rated audio podcast at Dicetower.com. You can also find other great shows at Dicetowernetwork.com. I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower. The Dice Tower is sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc., where you can find great games for great prices. Cool stuff in stock. Check them out at CoolStuffInc.com.